Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 632, The Brain is Wider Than the Sky, one of the most anthologized of Emily's poems, often in high school, even high school level anthologies. Now in many ways we're back to poem 556. You guys will maybe remember when we played the game of 556 and it ran like this. The brain within its groove runs evenly and true, but let a splinter swerve, 'twere easier for you to put a current back when floods have slit the hills and scooped the turnpike for themselves and trodden out the mills. When published in 1896, this poem by the early editors was called The Brain. It is another comparison poem, but let's point out something. For Emily, often in her poetry, words are interchangeable for brain, mind, consciousness, self, spirit, soul. These words for Emily are often interconnected. So when she says brain is wider than the sky, she could easily mean the mind is wider than the sky. Emily, the great lover of the current science and of course some of the new science and the neurology that was happening just during her own lifetime. We don't know a lot about Emily's education, but we do know that she loved the science classes that she was a part of. Our assumptions are that you've been with us at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily as our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments, as well as the preceding 631 poems we just finished with 631, Ourselves Were Wed, One Summer Dear. Now, Emily is playing around with those big five as we introduce them in our introductory comments. This poem, for sure, playing around with questions of epistemology, what you can know, ontology, who you are, psychology, the study of the individual mind and its motivations, as well as sociology, the study of the group and the comparisons between the two, and then finally the question of theodicy. Why must there be pain and suffering, and how do we deal with that in our mind? One scholar has called this poem, in her questioning about whether we're body, mind, or spirit consciousness, and how are we any or all of those, quote, an unsettling reversal of the relationship between human consciousness and that which exists external to it, end quote. Now, I want you to pay attention to all the B's and the S sounds of this poem, and I want you to notice how it's almost built like a syllogism or a logical argument. She says it this way: the brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease, and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ if they do, as syllable from sound. Now, Emily the philosopher, saying in just a few lines what it will take Plato just volumes and volumes of words to say, and Emily is going to reduce in a very provocative way. Notice again all the B sounds and the S sounds. She'll begin first of all with the brain is wider than the sky. Notice we go from wider to deeper to just, okay? And sky, when we get to poem 1176, we'll come back to this poem and this use of sky. We never know how high we are till we are asked to rise. And then, if we are true to plan, our statures touch the skies. The heroism we recite would be a normal thing did not ourselves the Cupid's rap for fear to be a king. This idea of the sky as being the penultimate. And yet she says, the mind can somehow capture everything that would encompass, quote unquote, the sky. And here's her argument. Notice the 4-4-4 construction of this poem, F-O-R. Put them side by side. In other words, compare them, the mind versus the sky. The one the other will contain, I think contain possibly the key word of this poem, with ease, and you beside. In other words, think of it, no pun intended. When we think, we are in fact encompassing physical objects that will seem transcendent to us in some profound way. The sky is actually what we think of when we look at that firmament, as the King James Version of Emily's Bible would have called it. From wider, notice we go to deeper. So notice we're going horizontal as well as vertical. The brain is deeper than the sea, right? For hold them blue to blue, blue the color of vastness. The one the other will absorb as sponges buckets do. In other words, you can talk about the sky, you can talk about the sea. But of course, in the end, you're only thinking about those things. Ultimately, the mind can somehow capture all of the external realities, i.e. consciousness. And then finally, we go from wider to deeper, and now, the word just. Now, of course, Emily's reading of Plato, and especially Republic, would tell us that she knows that Plato is in fact asking what is justice. So her use of the word just here is not a throwaway word at all. By the way, we've given full lectures on Plato's Republic at learnstrong.net if you want to run that to ground. The brain is, notice here, just the weight of God. Now, she'll use God in 127 of her poems. And in many ways, she's playing the game of the earlier, if you will, the sponge here of the mind is capable of absorbing anything, including the sea. The brain is just the weight of God. In other words, it will be equal with divinity. For, back to her syllogistic construction, heft them, that is to say, heft, right, to lift in order to weigh, kind of thing. Pound for pound, and they will differ, that is to say, your mind versus divinity, if they do, again, notice the use of the dash, as syllable from soul. Syllable from sound. Now, there's two readings of this. One is that the brain is larger than God and more provocative, more important than God, deity. The other is that, in fact, God is larger than the brain because it assumes everything. In other words, God is soul, God is consciousness. I'm going to leave it to you to decide how you want to read this. But the question, obviously, is, does nature, and therefore the extension, obviously, sky and sea, does nature, and then by extension, God, exist only in the mind? Because that's where we live, is in the mind. Now, when we get to poem 670, we'll come back to this study. I mean, this is a powerful poem for a number of poems that we'll work with. One need not be a chamber to be haunted. One need not be a house. The brain has corridors surpassing material place. Far safer of a midnight meeting, external ghost, than its interior confronting that cooler host. Far safer, though an abbey gallop, the stones a chase, than unarmed one's a self-encounter in lonesome place. Ourself behind ourself, concealed. Should startle most, assassin hid in our apartment, be horror's least. The body borrows a revolver, he bolts the door, overlooking a superior specter or more. And when we get to poem 822, we'll come back to this study as well. This consciousness that is aware of neighbors in the sun will be the one aware of death, and that itself alone is transversing the interval experience between and most profound experiment appointed unto man. How adequate unto itself its property shall be, itself unto itself, and none shall make discovery. Adventure most unto itself, the soul condemned to be, attended by a single hound, its own identity. Finally, when we hit poem 1071, we'll come back to this. Perception of an object costs precise the object's loss. Perception in itself, again, replying to its price. The object absolute is not. Perception sets it fair, and then upbraids a perfectness that situates so far. Now, what is the message of a poem like this? I think her argument is that some things, especially ideas or concepts, are translinguistic. I think she's playing around with Plato's theory of the forms from Republic Book 6 and, of course, the cave allegory of Book 7. At 2b, well, as we said, the B and S sounds here, I think, are provocative. Sky, side, sea, sponges, syllable, sound, or the B sounds. Brain, beside, brain, blue, bucket, brain, Emily's in fine form here. At 3a, well, I mentioned Plato's Republic, poem 670. When we get to that one, as we've already said, one need not be a chamber to be haunted. One need not be a house. The brain has corridors surpassing material place. Now, again, her use of the word brain and mind will be, in many of these poems, synonymous. Finally, in 3b, a challenging poem. What are your thoughts about this? Which, in your estimation, comes first, the syllable or the sound? I hope it is true that Emily is challenging you. Thank you.